All right, I'm going to start you off with an introduction to drafting and some of the tools to at least get you started. If you're not as comfortable with the concept, you can follow along and stay with me through this video step by step. It'll probably be somewhere near 15 minutes. Drafting is really taking a one-dimensional design and making it look three-dimensional. It's on a flat piece of paper. Draw a whole bunch of lines, connect them to make a two-dimensional drawing, but the perspective and the shading will make it look three-dimensional. So the tools that you're going to need to do it manually and by hand will be a T-square. Your T-square, make sure that all of your angles will be perfectly straight, and you will never move this because it's going to be at 90 degrees to the board. So your T-square will always stay locked up to the drafting board. So you need to use a drafting board. It'll probably have a metal edge. Your T-square will never be moved off of the side. It's going to stay locked in and only move up and down based on where you need to draw. Your other tool, I call it a bunny hill, is your angle measure. It's by Alvin. The reason I call it a bunny hill is because it's always going to stay with a nice friendly slope. You will never put it this way, which I call the black diamond. It's a real dramatic slope. So it's only going to go this way when you need to make an angle going down this direction, and you can flip it so it's an angle going down this direction. So you have two different ways that you can use this. You'll also need a pencil, preferably a couple pencils, maybe one sharp, and an eraser, as well as some tape once you get started. Let's begin by locking your paper in place, making sure it's at a perfect angle by pressing it against the T-square. Okay, once it's in place, we're just going to press it down with a small piece of tape so that it's held in place. Just pinch some onto the corners, and this will lock it in place. Oop. I want to make sure the paper is nice and flat. Next, we're going to look at the object that we're making a scale model of. This object, we know, has sides that are 12 feet, 6 feet, 4 feet. Back side's 12 feet, 4 feet. If this is 2 feet and the whole thing is 4 feet, then this side must also be 2 feet. And then we'll figure out the insides. The scale model that you're making shows that 1 inch on your scale drawing represents 2 feet of the actual size. So what might be helpful is to write each measurement in inches. If 1 inch is for every 2 feet, then 2 inches would be 4 feet and 3 inches would be 6 feet. When you make your model, you're going to follow this path. First, you'll draw this angle, and we're going to go around the body of this. Second, you're going to move up, and that's going to be second. Third, you're going to move around the outside of the framework. Fourth, let's move down. That's your fifth line, sixth line, seventh line, and eighth line. Once you have this outer framework, it's a pretty simple drawing. So draw the first line with me, and if you feel like you really have a good grasp, or maybe the first couple lines to make sure you're using the bunny hill properly, then you can shut this off and give it an attempt on your own, or reference the video when you fall into a place where you might struggle. We're going to start by drawing, where I said spot 1, this side that's 6 feet. Well, 1 inch represents every 2 feet, so this line must be 3 inches. Because we're only going 3 inches back in this direction, we probably want to start closer to the right side of the paper so we don't run out of room when we need this 6-inch line over here. So I'm just going to put a dot pretty close to the right. Definitely, probably 3/4 of the way down the paper. This spot right here is going to be where I start. I'm going to make my drawings in pencil, and you're going to need a ruler, but I will go over them in marker to make sure that everyone can see it. So it looks like we're going up at an angle for 3 inches. So I'm going to put the Elvin over here so that it intersects. And I'm going to go up at an angle. I'm not going to measure out 3 inches. I'm just going to draw my line first. Now that I have my line drawn, I'm going to measure 3 inches. And then I'll erase everything that's over 3 inches. Actually, I just had enough room on this paper. So that's 3 inches right there. And I'm just going to go over that. Probably should use a ruler. But this way can be seen. So that's 3 inches. Now I'm going to go up for this 4 feet. So that's going to be a 2-inch line straight up. Now for your Elvin, don't put it this way. Still just slide it along and you'll just go up for 2 inches. And like I said, I'm not going to measure as 2 inches first. I'll just make a line and then I will erase it afterwards. Once I figure out how long 2 inches is, okay, so I'm going to erase everything over that 2 inches. You shouldn't be using a Sharpie for this, but I want to make sure it shows up on the video. So that's your 2-inch line. Now we have that side that's 12 feet. We're going to represent that. If 1 inch for every 2 feet, then we're going to represent that with 6 inches. And you can see it's going like up at an angle. So if we hold the bunny hill like this, make sure your T-square is pressed against the side, it's going to be going down. So we need to flip the T-square and, not the T-square, I'm sorry, the bunny hill. And we're going to go up for 6 inches, making sure it intersects with that vertex I just drew. So 6 inches is pretty long. So let me just measure that out. Ooh, and my line actually is not even long enough. So I'm just going to have to add a little bit. And I'm going to go over it with marker just to make sure it can be seen. Okay, so I drew my 6-inch line. After that 6-inch line, you're going to be doing this side now, which will be 2 inches. And that's at an angle going downward. Let me just measure out 2 inches. Actually, that is 2 inches right here. Okay, I'll erase everything over that we don't need. After that, we go straight down now. There's no angle, and we go straight down for 2 feet, because this was 2 feet, 2 feet, this was 4 feet. So that's only 1 inch. So it's a pretty short line. So I'm going to make sure my T-square is locked up against the side and go down for 1 inch. Let me just measure it, make sure you're not using the millimeter side, as I almost just did. All right, so that was this line right here. As you can see, the framework is really coming along. Looks like I just kind of have a line going outward, down, and then around to connect. So I drew this line going down. Now I'm going to go outward for, let's see. This line was 4 feet, which means from here to here was 4 feet. If this whole thing is 6 feet, then that means this part right here must be 2 feet. So we're going to go outward for 1 inch. So 1 inch is 2 feet. So I'm going to hold the bunny hill like this, and we're just going to go outward for 1 inch. And we'll measure it. Okay, that was about perfectly 1 inch. Okay, now we go down for another inch, which was 2 feet. Just going to slide the bunny hill this way. I'll give it a measure. Okay. We've got an inch. Perfect. Now we're just drawing this line right here. We really shouldn't need to measure it because if we did all the other measurements correct, they should just line up. As you can see, let me get this locked into place, and there we go. Okay, so now we have the framework, which means all we have left is those inside lines. So I'd recommend making this line, well, yeah, I'd probably make this line up and then just intersect it right here. And then you're just drawing it back. And so you can look at the measurements, or you can just look at the angles and just intersect everything. So we know that this was 2 feet, 2 feet. So this one has to be 2 feet too. So I'm going to measure it. Or actually, I'll just draw that line straight up. And right now, if you got it, you don't even need to keep watching. You can measure it so that it's an inch, but we also know we want it to intersect right over here. So you can also just look at making it intersect. Okay, so you can see, and I'm just going to do this quickly without even a ruler, just by hand, so that you can see these lines. Actually, I should really make them straighter. Okay, so you can see these lines. So right now I kind of got that base. And you could have drawn these inside lines in whatever order you want. From here, from this intersection which I'm at right now, you can see I'm going to go back a certain point. I don't even need to measure it because it's going to intersect right here. If I do measure it, I would have to see, okay, that was 2 feet, so this would be 2 feet. But I'm not even going to worry about that so much. I'm just going to get my bunny hill, oops, there we go. Get my bunny hill in place. And now remember I said it's going to intersect with that other side. Okay, so I'm going to erase that extra. Let me just go over my lines. Oops. Looks like, see, I just made a mistake because it looks like my T-square wasn't pressed in firmly to the board, so I actually made that line at an angle. I was getting a little too quick there. And that fixes it. And now you can see our perspective is almost done. We just need to go a little bit up and then over. So we go up for 2 inches. And you can make all these measurements if you want, or you can just think about them as intersections. And I'm going to think about them as intersections rather than measuring them out perfectly. Oops. And this, you see, intersects down at an angle. So I'm just going to make the intersection and then erase that excess line instead of making all the measurements. And we have one extra line to make, and that is this line right here, in the order that I did it. Of course, people can do it many different orders. And so I'm just going to actually draw this line straight with my Sharpie, and you can see we have a 3-dimensional drawing. Now, you can give it some perspective by doing some shading. And this isn't the best job of shading. So, to get a little better idea, this is the one I just previously made. And you can see it has pretty good perspective, so it looks like a three-dimensional object out of a one-dimensional design. If you're interested in these and you want to continue to make more, there's a whole bunch of designs, or you can create your own.